All right, welcome back to the most awkward video series on the internet. I just want to thank my mom for being the third subscriber. I am this much closer to becoming YouTube famous, and I expect the checks to start rolling in any minute now. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 3 of Golding's Lord of the Flies, entitled Huts on the Beach. Huts on the Beach. So the chapter title tells you about the progress the kids have made on the island, that they are establishing some kind of society, as evidenced by the huts.
I know.
Abraham Maslow, is a famous psychologist, theorized that to exist, to be what he called self-actualized, human beings required first securing food, clothing, and shelter. Without food, clothing, and shelter, mankind can't progress and have relationships and gain knowledge or what he says becomes self-actualized without those three components. So the students, like I keep saying, are sort of wavering between what we call civility or society, sort of recreating what life was like at home, as evidenced by the building of the huts, of the democratically trying to elect a leader, of wearing different clothing to signify rank with the choir. So the huts are another symbol of that attempt to create order out of disorder. So at the first part of the chapter, we get a little bit more characterization. Characterization as a literary term. Characterization means attempts by the author to make a character seem real. I'll wait while you write that down. Characterization, attempts by the author to make a character seem real. So we have some direct characterization here about Jack. We see on page 48, Jack crouched with his face a few inches away from the clue. He stared forward into the semi-darkness of the undergrowth. His sandy hair, considerably longer than it had been when they dropped in, was lighter now, and his bare back was a mass of dark freckles and peeling sunburn. A sharpened stick about 5 feet long trailed from his right hand, and except for a pair of tattered shorts held up by his knife belt, he was naked. Take a deep breath, ladies. He closed his eyes, raised his head, and breathed in gently with flared nostrils, assessing the current of warm air for information. The forest and he were very still. So while Ralph has taken on the role of leader, and Piggy is sort of the rationalist, pain in the butt, Jack has become this hunter tracker, and you can see that even his physical appearance has been changed by his experience on the island. He is tracking animals in the woods by noticing their footprints, by smelling the air to see if animals had passed through that area recently. He even, on page 49, encounters fresh poo, which he smells, and to see just how close by his prey, the pigs, are, those ever-present pigs. So eventually he encounters in the jungle, he encounters the pigs.
No.
I'm sorry. He's in the woods in the jungle, and he encounters pigs.
No.
He's in the woods, in the jungle, tracking, and he finds the pigs.
No!
Alright. He's in the woods, tracking, and he finds the pigs.
No!
Alright. He's in the woods, tracking, and he encounters the pigs. There he is. Encounters the pigs. Alright? So again, that's actual footage from the island. But alas, just like from before, he attempts to throw the spear and misses, perhaps because he's a young kid and he's trying to throw a 5-foot spear. But what can you do? He misses his prey and curses and storms back into the woods, back down to the beach, where we encounter three of the other main characters. We have Simon and Piggy, who are busy trying to make huts on the beach, which the process is not going very well. Up to this point, they only have two really shaky, not very solid foundations for some huts. Why? Because Ralph, the leader, has taken to lying on his back and staring at the clouds rather than helping. Is this a little critique from Golding about the nature of society, that once we elect leaders, that they lay down on their back and watch and look at the clouds while the rest of us toil and try to work? We have Simon, who is again helping Piggy try to be reasonable and make the huts, and then we have the little uns, the young kids, who have just decided that they don't want to help out with the process, and they have scattered into the woods or on the beach, and they're playing in the shallow pool, they're playing in the ocean, they're playing in the jungle. They're not helping at all. So this chaos aspect that I keep talking about of the jungle has gotten to them, that they no longer, or whatever shreds of humanity, of civility, of society in the little kids, the smallest kids, has vacated. So Piggy tells Ralph that, hey, you're the leader, you need to do something about this, and Ralph replies, page 51, meetings. Don't we love meetings? Every day, twice a day, we talk. He got one on the elbow. I bet if I blew the conch this minute, they'd come running. Then we'd be, very solemn, and someone would say, we ought to build a jet or a submarine or a TV set. When the meeting was over, they'd work for 5 minutes, then wander off and go hunting. Jack flushed. So there's some issues arising between these main characters of Piggy and Ralph. Perhaps this sort of this conflict of man versus man is creeping in, but still the dominant conflict here is man versus nature. Page 52, we get representation of that, where we have this idea of the snake monster again. He paused for a moment, and they both pushed their anger away. Then he went on with the safe, changed subject. You've noticed, haven't you? Jack put down his spear and squatted. Notice what? Well, they're frightened. He rolled over and peered into Jack's fierce, sturdy face. I mean, the way things are, they dream. You can hear them. Have you been awake at night? Jack shook his head. They talk and scream, the little uns, even some of the others, as if this wasn't a good island. So then they get into the discussion about the shelters again, and how shelters are, they're a good protection against the elements, but also a good protection against danger. Page 53, Jack talks about how he's been hunting in the woods and he sensed a presence. He says, if you're hunting something and you catch yourself feeling as if, he flushed suddenly, there's nothing in it, of course, just a feeling, but you can feel as if you're not hunting, just being hunted, as if something's behind you all the time in the jungle. Is it something literal? Is there this monster that he keeps referring to actually lurking in the woods? Jack would be the one to experience that because he is the hunter. But up to this point, no solid sightings of the monster. We end on page 56 and 57 with a really interesting, again, characterization, this time of Simon. Simon walks up off the beach because the little ones are hungry, and he procures for them, he gets for them fruit from a tree. Fruit from a tree. Does that look like fruit?
No.
He gets for them fruit from a tree. Fruit from a tree.
I know that.
You can't get good help these days. No, I'm serious. He gets fruit from the tree. No. Fruit from the tree. He picked his way up the scar, past the great rock where Ralph has climbed on the first morning, then turned off to his right among the trees. He walked with an accustomed tread through the acres of fruit trees, where the least energetic could find an easy if unsatisfying meal. Flower and fruit grew together on the same tree, and everywhere was the scent of ripeness and the booming of a million bees at pasture. Here the little uns who had run after him caught up with him. They talked, cried out unintelligibly, lugged him towards the tree. Then, amid the roar of bees in the afternoon sunlight, Simon found for them the fruit they could not reach, pulled off the choices from up in the foliage, passed them down to the endless outstretched hands. When he had satisfied them, he paused and looked around. The little uns watched him inscrutably over double handfuls of ripe fruit. So Simon becomes the giver. Simon becomes the food source. So yeah, while Ralph has the power of the shell and the power of being democratically elected leader, what happens when he is unable to provide food? Simon is. Later on down the page, 56 and 57, Simon paused. He looked over his shoulder as Jack had done at the close ways behind him and glanced swiftly around to confirm that he was utterly alone. For a moment, his movements were almost furtive. So furtive means to sneak, to be secretive. So after he feeds the kids, he pushes them back to play, and he wanders by himself into the woods secretively. Odd that Simon, wants to be by himself and he's sneaking away. Then he bent down and wormed his way into the center of the mat, meaning the mat of those creepers, those vines. He finds his way into the middle of them. The creepers and the bushes were so close that he left sweat on them and pulled them together behind him. When he was secure in the middle, he was in the little cabin, screened off from the open space by a few leaves. He squatted down, parted in leaves, and looked out into the clearing. Nothing moved but a pair of gaudy butterflies that danced round each other in the hot air. Holding his breath, he cocked a critical ear at the sounds of the island. Evening was advancing toward the island. The sounds of the bright, fantastic birds, the bee sounds, even the crying of the gulls that were returning to their roosts among the square rocks were fainter. The deep sea breaking miles away on the reef made an undertone less perceptible than the susurration of the blood. Simon has found this clearing in the middle of the forest in all the brambles and thorns and bushes that people can't even walk through without being scratched up or, they're way blocked. But Simon has found a way to the middle of that, to a clearing. And we end the chapter with, more of this mysterious characterization of Simon. He has a very close attachment to nature, to the bees, to the ocean, to the sounds and the smells and the sights. Remember that imagery we talked about: tactile, gustatory, auditory, visual, and olfactory. All of those types of imagery are at play in this scene. Now the sunlight had lifted clear of the open space and withdrawn from the sky. This is the very last paragraph in the chapter. Darkness poured out, submerging the waves between the trees till they were dim and strange as the bottom of the sea. The candle buds opened, their wide white flowers glimmering under the light that pricked down from the first stars. Their scent spilled out into the air and took possession of the island. So that imagery that I just talked about, specifically here, the olfactory imagery has taken over the island. And that's where we end chapter 3. Got off easy. It's only about a 16-page chapter. What I'm asking you to do this week is to think about the roles that the different students are taking on the island, specifically the Littlins, what's happening to them, the transformation of Simon, of Jack, of Ralph, and of course of Piggy. And what does this say about, what happens when man is confronted with that conflict of nature? When we have chaos inflicted into our lives, when discord replaces society and civilization, yes, we do try to, take whatever levels of civilization we can. We elect a leader, or we come up with rules and punishments. We assign roles, and we try to make structures like huts. But how does that last little line in the chapter, what does that mean to you? That it's the island, the smell of the island itself that encapsulates everything, that covers over everything. So, that's the question that I'm asking you is, who wins this conflict? Is it going to be nature, or is it going to be the children who are sequestered there? So, in the meantime, happy hunting. Remember, if you're going to spear a pig, use a spear that's your size. Last words?
What is the last word? What is the last word then?
It's whatever you want to say. You got 10 seconds.
How about a secret password? Peace out. Blah 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 blah. Can I make a video now?
That's gonna be on the test.